Welcome back, David. I'm gonna pick up your brain today. Might go on a deep dive. Let
Right.
let you run free on this because we talked about like health trackers and things like that last time. And in between all those conversations, and obviously over the years, we always have had someone that is kind of doing the right stuff, or they think they're doing the right stuff, and it comes sometimes almost clashing with what you would suggest myself have experienced and so on and so forth, which leads me to picking your brain on how medical algorithms work, because we know you can literally look up on the internet, if you have such and such issue, what's going to happen, what my doctor is going to do with me, and it'll give you a list of things that you're going to go through to almost inevitably become lifelong patient.
Mhm.
So what is happening there? Like, why are these things happening? And is this actually beneficial for us? Or maybe there is some better questions we can ask our doctors to kind of maybe go a little bit different route. Like, I'll give you an example for myself. When I was doing my first ever blood test, I was like 12 or 13 or something like that. And my powerlifting coach sent me to do a blood test. I did a blood test, came back to doctors. She hadn't even looked at the blood test yet. In front of me, she put the blood test down, went to the shelf, picked the book down, put down, had a look at it, and said, "You got kidney failure. We need to send you to doctors. Put you in hospital immediately, pretty much." And I'm like, "What?" Lo and behold, I go back to my coach, and he's like, "Do 2 days of not training, drink plenty of water, go back, do another test, see what she says." Came back, and she's like, "It's a miracle. How could you heal your kidneys?" Turns out my creatinine was high because I was taking 20 grams of creatine a day, or at the time. I was leading up to powerlifting comp. I was training 2, 3 times a day. Young kid, energy up to the roof. You couldn't stop me at that time. So obviously there was a little bit metabolite showing that I trained hard. That was it. But doctor, so hey, this is out of range. We need to put you in hospital. I don't know what she wanted to do, dialysis, or you name it, crazy stuff. Uh, and then also I personally have had a couple of my clients who have had issues with some joints, and they go to doctors, and first thing what they do, hey, you have inflammation, we need to give you a cortisone shot. And
Yeah.
I know personally one of my physios that I don't know many physios that are actually good, only handful, and one of them was a very high level athlete. And when I talked to him about that, because I saw him administering it to older people, and I'm like, why would you never suggest this to me? Because I had some issues in my joint when I was doing powerlifting. And he said, because you're physically active, cortisone will actually damage your tissues and make them weaker. Because of that, it might take pressure away from nerves or something like that, and you have less pain. But if you're not 80, 90 years old, but still young guy who's physically active, that's the worst thing you can do for yourself. So what is happening there? What do we know about these algorithms? And is there something that people can go and ask and maybe get an alternative treatment, or maybe second opinion? Or maybe you can just explain like, hey, these are the things you need to know before you agree with your doctor. Hey, what you're telling me, I'm going to go with it. Or maybe let's give us some time and try something else before that. Because we know once you start messing around with your joints and stuff like that, there's no going back.
Yeah. So first, let's talk about how the body heals itself, right? Like everybody's going to be kind of at the base level, or at least understand that, inflammation is the signaling part of the healing process. So inflammation is not a bad thing if you are training hard. For example, your coach said, or not your coach, but your physio said that you're a young athlete, you're active. He probably expects some level of pain and discomfort because you're going to be inducing inflammatory responses very regularly, maybe even daily, right? And if you introduce cortisone, what it mainly does is it suppresses inflammation. That's the healing signal, right? So you're going to be stopping the process of healing when you should be able to heal completely on your own, right? And to even collaborate with him some more. There's lots of studies that show that repeated cortisone injections weaken tendons, accelerate cartilage breakdown, and impair stem cell repair. So, yeah, yeah. So,
That's scary.
right. So the moment you understand that, right, that it's stopping your own body from healing, and it's going to inhibit about three different pathways that your body's going to use to heal itself, which can lead to early osteoporosis and tendon rupture, right? So if you are somebody who's active, cortisone should be the very last thing. Now, if you've been anybody that's been listening to us for any length of time, you pretty much understand that the thing that you want to optimize is your mitochondria. They're what's going to literally induce all of the healing processes in the body. Now, let me phase it in a way that might make more sense without doing a lot of science, right? And that's this: all healing processes and technically all regeneration processes, whether it's surface level healing or healing of muscle tissue from a training or healing bone from a fracture or anything like that, basically any regeneration, including, and this has been demonstrated in past science by Dr. Robert O. Becker, including regeneration of severed limbs, like a finger. We know we can regenerate a finger. Like, people think that that's absurd, that if you cut off your finger, it's kind of done. That can be regenerated with low level electrical stimulation. And by low level, I mean really low level, really, really, really low level. It's like uh, 400 microvolts of electricity is what's required to get this done, right? So we're talking incredibly low electrical current. That is the on switch for regeneration processes in your body. So think of it like let's compare the body to a self-healing robot, right? And in order for you to kick on that self-healing process, the robot has to turn on this very low voltage system, right? So that's the power that's going to drive the regeneration process. Where does that power come from? It comes from hydrated melanin, right? So you can look this up. Anybody can look this up. Melanin, when it's dehydrated, is very electroconductive. We know this because of studies with using melanin for solar panels. NASA's now even using it for solar panels and things or trying to integrate it because it produces the most voltage whenever it's interacted with by any electromagnetic field when it's dehydrated. Obviously, in your body, melanin is not dehydrated. It should be hydrated. And that's how it controls the voltage, right? Because nerve signaling is not 400 microvolts. So in other words, making a bicep curl, that requires way more voltage than the 400 microvolts, right? So how does your body, and that's why you regenerate only when you sleep, not while you're awake, because you require a very low level of electricity to induce the regeneration stage versus a high level of electricity when you're awake and moving, right? So it has to have a way to modulate that. How does it modulate that? With melanin hydration status. So, in other words, during the day when you're moving and being active, you are slightly less dehydrated than when you're asleep, or at least that's how it should work. That's how it can drive the voltage lower while you're asleep if you're hydrated properly versus when you're awake. You're going to be moving and sweating and doing all the things. You're going to be in a slightly dehydrated state. That's normal. That's how the body regulates voltage. So whenever you are interacting with an electromagnetic field while you sleep, you are no longer hydrated, and so the voltage on the melanin sheets in your body are higher than they should be, and you don't kick on the regeneration phase of things, right? So now that you understand that part, melanin's role in regeneration has to do with controlling the voltage of the regeneration program. Now you have to understand that melanin is next to just about all of your mitochondria. Wherever you have a lot of mitochondria, you're going to have a lot of melanin. Your brain, for example, has a black mass inside of it called the substantia nigra that's full of melanin. And your brain has a lot of mitochondria. You have a lot of mitochondria in your chest and next to your organs in the center of your body. You're gonna whenever you open somebody up, if you ever had a cadaver, you see a lot of organ systems that have a lot of dark matter to it. That's melanin. That's localized melanin in all of these energy, all close to all of these energy intense systems, your organs, right? So they require a lot of electrical current while they're working, and while you're sleeping and you're going through regeneration phases, that melanin needs to be hydrated to the maximum to lower the voltage as much as possible to kick on the regeneration program. So that led us that ties into the previous conversation that we had just last week about all of these um, devices that are supposed to induce sleep and induce different effects in the body like caffeine or marijuana or THC or whatever, right? And some of them even are supposed to make it so that you sleep deeper and better. Those programs are governed by this whole melanin process and dehydration processes. If you have a device that's touching your body, all of these touch your body, right? Like the watches, the whatever, and then even the one the Hap Bee or whatever, that's like a thing that you put on your head that you sleep on. They are all going to induce an electrical field that your body can't get rid of because you're wearing it. And so that by default is going to raise the voltage on melanin sheets, which makes it impossible for you to kick on your own regeneration program. This is high tech medical algorithm at its finest, meaning they don't have to even ask for your consent. You're willingly going out and buying these devices now because they're pitching them to you. So now that you have that framework kind of in mind, let's talk about this cortisone uh, injection and how the medical algorithm goes through that. And then you're going to see how that ties to these devices, right? So just follow me through this, right? The medical algorithm for a cortisone, or let's forget about the cortisone for the moment. You're an athlete, or you're just somebody who's active and you have shoulder pain or joint pain of some kind, right? You go into the doctor, first thing they're going to give you is NSAIDs and rest. They're going to take you this, they're just going to tell you to take some, which you probably have already done, right? They're going to ask you that question. Hey, have you taken any, ibuprofen or Advil or whatever, right? And have you rested it, right? And if you haven't done that, that's the first thing they're going to tell you to do, right? And there you go. Now you paid your copay and they kick you back out the door in 10 minutes and come back if you have some pain after you've done that, right? But most likely the reason you're there is because you've already done that. You've been taking pain medication and you've been icing it or resting it or whatever, right? So the next thing they might do is, oh, well, maybe you just need some physical therapy. If you're somebody who's active, then you're doing physical therapy, right? So then the next step that they're going to do is they're going to give you a cortisone shot, right? So in 10 minutes, they can go from, hey, just take some pain pills, maybe a little physical therapy to, oh, we're going to give you a cortisone shot. And then the next step is imaging. Think about that. They're going to do imaging after the cortisone shot. What did I just describe that cortisone does? It inhibits inflammation and potentially breaks down cartilage breakdown and impairs stem cell repair. If you didn't have anything wrong with you before the cortisone shot, the likelihood of you having something wrong after the cortisone shot is higher because they're not going to do the imaging that same day, right? People forget to understand this. You're going to get the cortisone shot and you're going to get scheduled for imaging a week or two later, right? So the likelihood now is much higher that you're going to have some kind of damage or suppression of certain markers, or maybe the tendon getting a little bit smaller, et cetera, just from the cortisone shot alone. Now, can it happen after one cortisone shot? No, probably not. They're not even going to schedule for imaging with one cortisone shot, right? They're going to wait until you've come back once, twice, well, probably 2 to 3 times. Hey, this is a thing that keeps coming back. We keep giving you a cortisone shot. Maybe we need some imaging now. So after 3 or 4 administrations, then you'll get some imaging. Now you're very likely to have some kind of degradation in the tendon and ligament. What happens after the imaging? You get a surgery, right? And so that's the algorithm. That's not me saying it. That is the algorithm that you can Google. That's the steps that will happen, right? That's an algorithm not for helping you. That's an algorithm for making money, right? If you forget about what you're actually accomplishing there, if your goal as the medical establishment is to make money off of people from being sick, that's the perfect algorithm for that. Each time you came in and you paid the doctor, each time that you took a cortisone shot, that's for $500 to $1,000 that they got to charge your insurance, and imaging at the end of that, and surgery at the end of the imaging if needed, right? So they've maximized profit off of every single return, and then in some of these cases, the repeated cortisone shot potentially set you up for the big payoff at the end, a surgery, right? So that is what the algorithm is actually doing. It's not giving you help. It's
Yeah,
dulling the
it's pretty
symptoms.
crazy. Like my physio, he was like, "Don't take any painkillers if you don't need them. Don't do any of this." And it was like he was completely opposite way around.
Mhm.
And he would never tell. I even asked him, "Why are you not telling me to slow down my training?" He was like, "Well, first of all, will you listen? And second of all, like we are trying to make sure you can do what you're doing. Me asking you to stop doing what you're doing, it's just counterproductive. It's like it just makes no goddamn sense." So
Yeah.
I was extremely lucky to just to have physio like that.
Yeah. Well, but again, you probably, and again, at that point in time, there was probably nothing in the environment that suppressed your own body's ability to recover, right? Your own body's ability to regenerate, right? What did I just describe? Hey, low voltage melanin hydration. So in other words, I'm sure he asked, or even, you told him you had a coach. So I'm sure he's like, well, your coach is probably taking care of making sure that you're hydrated, making sure that you're drinking and eating as much as possible for
Yeah,
this intense
well, he
activity,
could
right?
see that I'm obviously not malnourished and
Correct, right? So,
morbidly obese
so,
and
so
things like
as so going back 20 or 30 years, that's really all you had to do. Stay hydrated, be out in the sun, and you're going to induce the regeneration program as long as you allow a little bit of time for your body to recover between bouts of training, right? Um, so, let's go a little bit further with this cortisone, right? Like, how does the cortisone actually induce these things? Well, like I mentioned at the beginning, it reduces inflammation, which is the signaling part of the healing process. It it also sabotages mitochondria. How does it do that? It downregulates POMC, POMC. What does that downregulate? Alpha MSH, the hormone or the peptide that induces melanin. So, in other words, it prevents you from making melanin at your melanin sheets directly. It also disrupts mitochondrial function for creating ATP. So, in other words, it creates oxidative stress and lowers ATP production, which is a pseudo-hypoxic state. Just like if you were to not be able to go out in the sun, you're going to induce a pseudo-hypoxic state. That is what the cortisone shot does. So cortisone is sabotaging everything that I just said about the regeneration program of how it's controlled by melanin and your mitochondria fuel the process and it downregulates the hydration status. How does it downregulate the hydration status? By lowering inflammation. Inflammation is hydration, right? Inflammation is a pool of substrate that is mainly water, cellular water, and all these other macrophages and other things in there that are going to, break down the damaged tissue and repair it. But it requires hydration. That's why it's if you ever gotten an inflamed knee and you've gotten it drained, there's a shitload of fluid in there.
that.
That fluid is there on purpose to keep the melanin sheets hydrated so that the regeneration program in that particular part of the body can be induced for longer periods of time. That's also why women that are pregnant have a whole lot of water retention. What are they ultimately doing? They're building another human being inside them. That's the regeneration program turned on to maximum. Why is the placenta full of fluid? It's because it needs to keep all the melanin in that child as hydrated as possible to induce all of the regeneration that's going to be happening and creating all the body parts, all the limbs, etc. It needs super amounts of hydration to keep the voltage on the melanin sheets as low as possible to create a new human being. We see this all the time whenever we just step back and take a look at these things, right? So, reducing inflammation is not just, oh, that's the signal for healing. The signal for healing is that regeneration program and keeping the melanin sheets hydrating. So, Cortisol's attacking each one of these steps systematically, or sorry, not cortisol, a cortisone shot is attacking all of these steps for your own regeneration systematically. So they have taken your ability away to naturally heal if you knew what to do. Uh, and it's setting you up to be a long-term customer and probably one of the best paying customers because at the end you might get a surgery, right?
So what can be done by somebody who has already started this kind of process? Because a lot of people will. We know, I've mentioned it many, many times in these videos, that every single time I train and my training session has been really intense, even if it hasn't been, I go out for a walk. Like ideally with no top on, something I've used to since I was a little kid, and for whatever reason I picked up that helped me recover. And now even more that I am physically aware that it does that, if I go even for 15 minutes and sit there in my shorts after heavy leg session, I know next day my knees are not going to hurt.
Yeah,
If I
yeah,
don't, I might have a little discomfort waking up next day.
yeah,
So is there something that people can already do? Because you already mentioned, hey, it's going to block your POMC and so on and so forth.
yeah,
What the
yeah.
hell?
So
What do I do about it?
there will, number one, right? If you've already started these types of things, then the first thing to do is recognize that and then stop doing them because that's going to, at least you stop the thing that's putting the roadblock on. And then the next thing you need to do is you need to assess why did it happen to begin with, right? Was it an overuse injury? Or was it because you already can't turn on your own regeneration program? That's probably going to be the most difficult part to understand. Do you have this injury because you already can't turn on your own regeneration program? And why would you not be able to? Maybe you interact with a lot of electromagnetic fields at night. Maybe you work at night, right? Or maybe you work on the computer at night or whatever, and you have all your lights on and everything like that. And that's creating a dehydration effect, right? So that's the first assessment for yourself, right? Is
So before you continue, I hope I don't
yeah, 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 yeah.
damage your flow, but it's probably more for somebody who's, let's say, use really advanced Peloton bike, screens everywhere, then works on their laptop all day, then have wearables to track all the kind of activities they physically do. And even if they live in a really sun-rich environment, now they're covered in sunscreen, you're basically doing everything that you shouldn't be doing, right?
100%, 100%. If you describe that person to me, it would not surprise me that they might have joint pain pretty much anywhere in their body, right? In their arms, in their shoulders, in their knees. It could be anywhere, and it would probably persist all the time because even though they're not technically doing anything outrageous, right? They are not able to turn on the regeneration program because they always have a high electrical environment going on with their mitochondria. And when they do go out in the sun to try to make POMC, they're blocking the whole process from the beginning, right? So the proper assessment, like for example, if you describe that person to me and they were getting a cortisone shot for whatever reason, right? Maybe it's a knee problem, right? Or maybe it's a wrist problem, right? Then the first thing that I would say is, okay, number one, let's start training you to be able to get proper sunlight, right? That is without blocking it so that you can start making your own melanin. Number two, all these fancy gadgets, let's start weaning you off of them as much as possible. And number three, and this could possibly be number one, if they do happen to live somewhere good, right? Like it's a good sunny environment and it's not super populated. They don't live right next to an airport. My assessment is that, hey, your electrical environment should actually be good, but why are you having an electrical problem? Then the first thing that I would say is, let's clean up your bedroom. Let's make sure that your bedroom is basically a dead zone. Let's turn off every electrical device around your bedroom, maybe even going as far as going to their breaker and their breaker box and turning off the power to their bedroom so that at least when they sleep, they don't have any electrical interference. And then the next thing that I would say is maybe it's time to really hydrate you. Lots of different ways to be able to hydrate the person, but we could do it with really expensive water, like deuterium depleted water that would super hydrate the melanin sheet so that you can create a very low voltage, or just going through a proper hydration protocol of assessing how much water they drink, how many electrolytes they have, and all of that, right? And it really depends on If they're already doing that type of thing, then maybe I would go as far as, hey, maybe for a month, drink some deuterium depleted water while we lower the electrical voltage in your sleeping area, and then do all these other things of, hey, let's get outside, let's get you tanning, properly. I'm not talking about burning you or anything like that, just proper sun exposure. And then limit LED lighting, right? Hey, the screen on your Peloton, cover it up, right? Because all of there are studies that demonstrate this. Even if you get tan during the day, interacting with blue LED lighting takes away the melanin. Why? Because melanin, whenever it's dehydrated, is sacrificed. That's one of its functions. That's how it protects you from heavy metals. That's how it protects you from electromagnetic fields. Is whenever it gets dehydrated, it raises the voltage on itself to actually be depleted and turn into neurotransmitters and things of that nature. But when it's hydrated, it doesn't deplete and it creates this regeneration program, right? And so those would be the like very low level, right? I listed like three things there, but they are very, very, very important to assessing whether you can turn on that regeneration program on your own, right? And then once you get doing that, then things like resting it, right? Hey, if you have a wrist problem, let's rest that particular limb, or a knee problem or whatever, until the pain goes away. And the more sunlight you get and the more hydration you get and the less electromagnetic field that you interact with while you sleep is going to be the thing that kicks on the regeneration program as best as possible. But that would be the assessment right now. If you live somewhere where the environment is really bad, then the list of the things that you need to do gets a lot longer, right? Like, hey, maybe you need to invest in some Faraday sheets, something that blocks EMF while you sleep if you can't move, or things of that nature. Maybe you need to invest in certain paints or certain shielding things for your room so that you can do that, right? It gets a lot trickier depending on your environment.
And I know we've touched up many times on nutrition and what kind of nutrients you think people would benefit from adding or checking if they already have or maybe not have that could have led to this issue?
Well, so number one is going to be, are you eating enough protein, and not just protein from like animal meats, but like collagen and things of that nature, right? Like, are you eating all of the meat? Like, are you making stews and things of that nature? They're going to have a lot of collagen. They're going to have a lot of glycine. They're going to have a lot of gelatin in them, naturally from, I'm not talking about going out and buying these synthetically. You can try to do that, but they're probably not going to work nearly as good because they don't have all the cofactors to go along with it, right? So, especially if you live in wintertime environments where you're going to spend a lot of time inside, you probably need to invest some time in making your own soups and stews and things of that nature that have collagen, gelatin, even shellfish, like just taking uh, uh, shrimp and all the shells from shellfish and crustaceans and boiling it down in them, because they also make a very special gelatin. They also have things like carotenoids in them that go onto your skin so that you can optimize melanin production, right? So food, from a food perspective, what you want to do is you want to concentrate on things that regenerate tendons, ligaments, and skin, right? So that you can actually take advantage of making your own melanin and being a little bit more sun resilient, right? Just like training, right? If you're training really hard with weight training and you're not eating enough protein, you're not going to go very far, right? Just because you're not going to be able to regenerate that skeletal muscle tissue as easily when you have a higher protein diet. Well, it's the same thing when you're trying to expose yourself to more and more sunlight. If you're not actively consuming enough fatty fish, for example, you're not going to create enough DHEA on the surface to turn into docosanoids when you interact with sunlight. So the food story becomes more of giving the body the right nutrients to take advantage of the sun that you're going to be exposed to and the melanin creation process, which is going to involve carotenoids, DHA, and collagen and gelatin from animal meats, animal organs, shellfish, all of those things. Those are going to be at the very top of the list as far as foods that you should be eating. Those particular foods are also going to be heavy in cofactors like zinc, copper, selenium, iodine. Those are the things that are going to be telling all these processes where to go and when to turn on and when to turn off. Um, so that is where I would go with from a nutritional standpoint, right? Vegetables aren't going to like normal vegetables. Let's put it this way: normal vegetables aren't going to fix this, right? Like eating your vegetables is not going to fix this. Uh,
It's it's very slippery slope, as much as you want to kind of go with go green and this and that, and human race would not survive if we were plant-based. We just wouldn't get much done. We wouldn't get anywhere. How do you survive
well, you wouldn't, you
winter
wouldn't,
in bulk
you would
state
end.
on
Mhm.
broccoli? It's not gonna
you,
happen.
you you would end up in a much more autoimmune slash gut dysbiosis
Mm.
society. And the reason why that's possible is because of our calorie video, right? Hey, the amount of sunlight that you interact with, the amount of electromagnetic fields that you interact with, dictates how cytochrome 1 versus cytochrome 2 is optimized, which is what's going to be you using those calories from plants versus animal sources, right? Plant sources are always going to be biased more towards NADH, and you need to optimize cytochrome 1 to be able to process those correctly. And that is only going to happen under high sunlight environments. UV light is what's going to optimize cytochrome 1 versus cytochrome 2, which is going to bias more towards an FADH. And FADH is more going to be prominent in animal source foods, fats and proteins. Um, so it's just makes sense to eat in a seasonal way. That's why I said people that live at a high latitude in the wintertime, that's the time when you need to lean into this style of eating that I just described, making your soups, because not only, remember what I said, hydrating melanin is the name of the game. Hydrated melanin is the thing that's going to kick on this. What if you're eating a stew or two every week that you've made that has gelatin and collagen and these carotenoids from seafood? It could be a seafood stew at the beginning of the week, and it could be a more robust, hearty stew at the end of the week. You're also going to have water in there. You're also going to have sodium and potassium and all these other electrolytes that are coming from. And I'm not saying don't put vegetables in these stews, right? I'm saying you want to have the base of a protein source, and then you add potatoes and you add carrots and you add all the other things, right? And then when you eat that stew, you're going to get all of that plus hydration and ions that are going to keep the melanin sheets hydrated. And that's really where you need to go with like from a nutritional standpoint of things that are going to help this process along. And if you want to take this even further, make that stew with deuterium depleted water.
Yeah. Well, it's always going back to like the way I was raised, that water was from a well. It didn't come from anywhere else. Water was really good. And obviously, it sounds weird that I say we didn't have fridge, freezer. So
Yeah,
you stored everything in a
in the
different
ground.
way. Where you talk about like gelatin food and this and that. Yeah, we had to do that with meat so it lasts longer through the winter.
Mhm.
And then you ate it in that way. And going from all this, can you give me a recipe for somebody who's trying to avoid this as much as they physically can? And by that I mean like a habit, a nutritional thing, and maybe some kind of physical interaction or procedures that they can, hey, go for a walk every single day, or
Mhm.
every single day try to be outside, or are there three things that you can tell? If you follow these three things, you are less likely to end up in doctor's office where they give you these algorithms that more often than not are actually taking away your ability to recover yourself.
Well, yeah, I can tell you with one thing. One thing, if you can guarantee that you do not have an electromagnetic field interacting with you at night while you sleep, I can guarantee you will be able to recover from just about anything because we know without a doubt That is the regeneration program, even to the point where now there's medical devices. You've even pointed one out to me earlier, where they can induce this effect of low level electrical activity. They it actually kind of suppresses your own electrical activity. It induces this low level electrical activity to regenerate tendons, ligaments, tissues, etc., and things of that nature. If you are able to do it on your own, and you will be able to if you don't have an electromagnetic field interacting with you while you sleep, then the answer is that's all you really need.
Mm.
Now, the that likelihood is very unlikely unless you go through extreme lengths, right? So that's scenario number one, which is like the optimal range, right? So if you're some farm boy in the middle of Kansas, living in a farmhouse that's like 30 miles away from everybody, you're not
Spending
going to have
one
this
week,
problem.
1 day a week in a tent.
Yeah. You're not going to have this problem, and you're probably not listening to this, right? Because you don't have any problems, right? So let's ignore that particular scenario for a moment, right? Uh, if you are somebody who lives in the modern world and you know work on a computer and your day-to-day life is somewhat indoors, right? Even myself, right? Like even though I have the time to do all these things, I still have to be indoors in the winter. I can't spend 9 hours outside in the winter. And that sort of stuff. So things that you need to do, right? Number one, in the winter, you need to shift your eating to be a little bit less carbohydrate and more protein based, maybe even going as far as making these stews and all of that type of stuff and keeping yourself hydrated properly. Ideally, if you can get spring water delivered to you from your high latitude area, that spring water is going to become slightly deuterium depleted. This deuterium depletion process is actually governed by the water cycle on the planet. The higher you're up in the elevation or the higher up in latitude that you are, the more deuterium depleted the water is. That's on purpose. That's nature's design. So getting water delivered to you from a well locally, even if you can't get, even if you don't have your own well, that is that is a big good plus that you can do anywhere on the planet. There are actual websites where you can go Google local spring water delivery services. And then the so that would be number one. Figuring out your water and making sure that you're getting it locally from wherever you live from a well would be ideal. Number two, shift your eating to be more seasonal. Number three would be regularly get outside in the morning and in the middle of the day, irrelevant of the time of year. And
Mm.
number four would be at night, try your very best to limit electromagnetic fields in your bedroom and prior to sleep, limiting LED lighting, right? That that's probably one of the more difficult things to do unless you just go all in and change your lighting altogether, change it to red, make sure that and then as far as like the whole limiting the electromagnetic field in your bedroom, that's also kind of difficult to do depending on your living situation. If you live in an apartment building or a townhouse or something like that, that's going to be a little bit harder to do because you don't have control of everybody else's electricity. If you live in your own house, now that becomes very easy to do. You can just go to the breaker and turn it off if you want to do that, or you just know that, hey, I don't have any electrical devices in my bedroom, so there's not really any problem. Then I would just uh, kind of leave it at that. Unless you are currently having a problem, then I would go out of my way to turn off the breaker for your bedroom. Um, those would be kind of like the 4 or 5 things right there that you can do very easily, in my opinion, to set yourself up for success so that you don't run into these issues to begin with. And then when you go to the doctor, right, this is probably one of the more important ones. When you go to the doctor, ask them questions like this. Hey, what is the long-term effects of whatever protocol you're trying to put me on? What are the sequence? Tell them to walk you through the algorithm. They know the algorithm, right?
Mm.
Tell them to walk you through the algorithm and then write it down, right? Don't agree to anything. You never have to agree to anything, right? Just know what the algorithm is going to go like. Hey, what's the sequence of events of if this happens, if this happens, if this happens. If the doctor can't tell you that, go find another doctor, right? Like it's really that
This is
simple.
literally something I had to do with one of my clients, and I had to tell him, look, if he does not agree that you're not going to go with this next step, what they are telling you to do, then just go and find someone else. And he had to walk out
Yep.
because there was like, no, you had to do this or nothing else. And you're like, I'm sorry, we don't talk in absolutes. It's a human body after all.
Correct, right? And so then, right, that's number one, right? Don't know the algorithm, right? Know what you're getting into because the algorithm is public, right? If the doctor's not going to tell you the sequence of events, you can be right in the doctor's office and you can Google it yourself, right? And you'll know, oh, okay, well, the next sequence of events is this. And you can ask the doctor, is that what's going to happen next? And the doctor will be like, well, yeah, if that happens, then that's what we're going to do, right? And immediately you start seeing the picture for yourself if you can critically think. And then you go back and you think about, okay, is this the best thing to do or whatnot, right? And then, uh, every case is going to be individual, right? But in terms of this particular conversation that we're having today, right, about cortisones and joint pain and things of that nature, the first thing that we want to do is make sure you do not engage in anything that's going to degrade the tendon and ligament directly. Make sure that you are not engaging in any behavior or any treatment that reduces the ability to activate POMC and activate melanin and is dehydrating in nature. Anything that does those things are things that you should use cautiously and basically only as a last resort if you've already done all these other things that we're talking about.